God. I start with Genesis chapter 1. It says, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." At first glance, the sentence seems pretty straightforward. It's easy to understand, but we want to take a second look, perhaps a little closer. What does the beginning actually mean? The very first word in the Bible in Hebrew is Beroshit. It may not be pronounced well, but regardless of that, the root of that word is head, or rosh, and the first letter means in or at, and the last letters imply of. So the use of the word head implies something at the top of, in head of something, at the start of creation, which is possibly where the idea to translate it as in the beginning originates. The first letter is the Hebrew letter bet. In the Midrash of the Talmud, and the Midrash is a commentary that the rabbis have developed over the thousands of years as they've read these scriptures and come up with thoughts about it. They note that the letter bet is enclosed on three sides, but it's open to the front. Now, Hebrew is read from right to left, so you see that it's open to the left there. In lore, this means that we should not strive to understand the origins of God, but look forward from the creation, because it's not something we will be able to fathom. It also, since it's the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet after Aleph, has historically symbolized that there was something that preceded the beginning. And as a logical note, clearly since God made the creation, God existed prior to this beginning. And relative to the reference to God as the Alpha and Omega that we will see later on in the scriptures, the beginning and the end, I'm suggesting that we consider this creation or this beginning as an indication as the beginning of time as it applies to us. Now, the Hebrew name of God used in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, like in all of Genesis' first chapter, is Elohim. This word choice may be contrasted with the Tetragrammaton, which appears later. But Elohim is the plural form of the Hebrew word meaning God, thus gods. Some people like to take it as meaning the supreme God of gods. Now, the verb in the verse is bara or barau, which means filled or fattened, shaped or fashioned. Note that by that usage, it does not appear to indicate ex nihilo, meaning out of nothing, but that God shaped what was already there. In verse 2, it says, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." Now, I want to note here that obviously the earth was already formed at this point. So what it really is saying, it was empty and desolate. Now, not completely formed perhaps, but it had some shape. Now, darkness in this case can mean two things. It can mean darkness, or maybe more than two things, just not having any light there, but it can also represent a lack of knowledge. Anyway, and I bring this up because I want you to be thinking about it in this way, because it might give you insight into things as we move forward. Also, the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters means power was exerted, creative whatever was exerted on the waters. And I thought it was interesting that it doesn't specifically state that God created the waters here. It, of course, in creating the heavens and the earth, you can associate waters as being part of that, but it didn't specifically say waters were created. Additionally, I want you to think of waters in a different kind of term, as we have also considered darkness up to this point. Waters is associated with people later on in the scriptures as a different kind of definition. So I want you to think about it in two different ways: waters as the normal definition of water, and waters as associated with people. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Now, I want you also to add a definition to light here. Consider associating light with the nature of God and with understanding. As we see later in the scriptures, God is defined as truth, love, light, and other things associated with this. And so when we think about that, let's add this so that we can get some new insights here. "And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness." Now, another interesting point here in the scripture is is that God specifically says that the light was good. He doesn't say that the darkness was good. He doesn't say the two of them were good. He says the light was good. And he divides the one from the other. And so we can also associate that with dividing good from evil, light or knowledge from lack of knowledge. And God called the light day, and darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. Now the creative period categorized as a day cannot be clearly understood here. Though it appears to be a specific period, some will circumscribe the day as the day of the Lord, 1,000 years to man. Others prefer to say it was a day as we know it, 24 hours. However, it was not until the fourth day in this creative description that the two great lights to rule the day and the night were formed. So all we can really say is that it's an unspecified period of time. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters." And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Now, I want us to think about this again, going back to the second meaning of waters as we discussed it earlier. You can divide regular waters, the waters below heaven, and the waters above heaven. But you can also think about it as a separation of people in the sense that we're looking at it. And I bring this up, and it's interesting here because the fact that at the end of the second day, this is the only action that is not separately declared good. When you read through this, you'll see that the second day, that doesn't say, and God saw that it was good. And I find it interesting if we are separated from God, that he doesn't really see that as something that he really enjoys or looks at as good. And that's why I want you to think about it in that term. The other part of this is the firmament, or heaven as it's defined here, also includes those things. So it's not just sky, because it also includes the stars, and the sun and the moon as part of the firmament in the fourth day, as we'll see. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered to one place, and let the dry land appear," and it was so. And God called the land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas, and God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree, the yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth," and it was so. And so on. And this was on the third day. Remembering these other kind of ideas, it's also good to kind of throw this in as you ponder over the scriptures and ponder over the messages that God is telling you. But there's clearly some things that are going on that are straightforward. And one of those things is after his kind. I want us to reflect on the things that after his kind. Obviously, and I put this little saying at the bottom, "A bird may love a fish, but where would they build a home together?" It's not really the original intent of this particular saying, but I like the context is that everything has its own measure of creation, and it is given its own law that it associates with, and so they reproduce after their own kind, and they are given their own part of that creation. So, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven, divide the day from the night, for signs and seasons, days and years, and to give light upon the earth, and to rule the day and the night." And he saw that it was good. Now, what I'm seeing here and what I want you to think about in terms of what this is all about is this indicates to me the love of God as he prepares the earth and the things thereon for the benefit of man. It shows he loves us. It shows he cares about us. He shows he's planning things with the idea that he can communicate to us and that we will have provision so that we can survive and be able to live in a state of life that is good. And then the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that has life, and fowls that fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And you note, if you can see there's a picture, and I don't know if my camera's able to get it clearly, but I put up a dragon in there. And that'll come clearly in books later down the road. But anyway, it says, God created great whales, and every living creature that moves. The water brought forth abundantly, and every winged fowl after his kind, and saw that it was good. And in the Bible, it doesn't really say, the original interpretation, whales, is not an accurate interpretation. It's elongated creatures or great monsters or whatever you want to say it, but it's not specifically limited to whales. And God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the seas, and let fowl multiply in the earth. The evening and the morning were the 5th day. And God said, let the earth bring forth a living creature after his kind, and so on. And so one thing I want you to note here, of course, he's telling them to be fruitful and multiply and fill these things up. So go forward and continue this creational throughout time, this creational event. But also at the if you look at the creation, you'll note that the days are paired with one another. Day 1 is paired with day 4, day 2 with day 5, day 3 with day 6. So it's an interesting kind of order that you'll see if you examine it closely. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle on the earth, and creeping things that creep on the earth, etc. Making them in his own image, male and female created he them. And so the idea here is that we are created in the image and likeness of God, both male and female. And it's in our form. It's not my form. This is in our form. It's speaking in the plural sense again. And they, Adam meaning both the male and the female in this case, are in our form and likeness. And there's no man without a woman, no woman without a man. And now the rabbis also bring up this part. In Hebrew, the words aish and vash, man and woman, there is the word also present that relates to God. And it says, if they are unworthy, the I from the word aish and H from vash is taken away, and thus God departs from them. And there are left the words ash and vash, which means fire and fire, and which in a sense leaves them to burn. Anyway, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and the fowl of the air, and every living thing that moves on the earth. Now, interesting note here, if replenish is the accurate word, that's an interesting term that's used here. It can be, from the original Hebrew, defined as fill. So if you think about it in two terms, it'd be interesting. If the shape, God shaped the world from previous use, maybe there had been a previous creation that it had been a part of. But if it was fill, then it just means fill the earth. Be fruitful, multiply. It's somewhat of a commandment in this sense. And have dominion over all these things. And God's delegating responsibility there. And he has given us every herb bearing seed. And he also says these things, all these plants that I've provided here, that I've told you about, is for meat. And meat here means food. Doesn't mean flesh of animals. It's just a word that is characterized in the scriptures as food. And to every beast of the earth, and every fowl of the air, and every living thing that creeps upon the earth, wherein there is life, I've given every green herb for meat, and it was so. So it's interesting, if we think about it, this original diet did not include animals eating one another. It included eating fruits and vegetables and plants. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day. So he sees it and says, it's really good. I give it an A+ here. So this is the conclusion of chapter 1. I will probably have an aside for you. I think that one of the things that is important as we ponder the scriptures and we think about them, God gives us additional insight and revelation that we can enjoy additional blessings and knowledge that we otherwise couldn't receive. So I encourage you to pray about it, pray about the scriptures, and